Hello everyone and welcome back to another faction focus review. It's the second to last one and it's Sylvaneth time. It's Jonas and Ryan here once again, almost finishing off the series. Ryan, we're really stretching things to make this work, right?
Yeah, it's been a stressful work week, so I'm still at work right now, and we're squeezing it in because we couldn't get our schedules lined up, and I think this is one of the more important ones to get out on time. So let's plow through it.
Yeah. So I had quite a lot of time to look at this, but you haven't had as much time as you usually do. But you're quick at analyzing things. So and luckily, I mean, compared to what I thought that we would get, we got a pretty small battle trades table, so that's good for timing. Um, if we're looking at the battle trades, there's only three of them, and all of them are pretty recognizable, though there have been some changes that are quite impactful to the army. So Endless Growth is a once per turn army ability, but it's at the end of any turn, so you get to do this twice per battle rounds. You pick any number of friendly Sylvaneth units wholly within 6 inches of a friendly Awakened Wildwoods to be the target. You heal D3 to each target. Now, this used to be a little bit more generous range-wise, I think. I believe it was 9 or
Yeah, by
yeah,
default. Yeah,
but it only healed one wound, and now it heals D3, and it only healed that wound in your hero phase, if I'm not mistaken, and now it heals at the end of any turn.
that's correct.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you actually get quite a lot of value from this ability, at least compared to the older version. Now, I do have to mention here that it really depends on what kind of army you're playing. Obviously, there's not a lot of one wound or one health models in the Sylvaneth army anymore, but Sylvaneth is usually so paper thin that anything that gets hit usually dies. Now, there are some pretty big units that don't fall under a category of being paper thin, and that's the big monsters. And they will benefit quite, greatly from 2d3 heals per battle round. So it's kind of a juicy buff here, but the range moving the range from 9 to 6 is also quite impactful and a strong nerf as well.
Yeah, it's like you're taking the season that used to, what was it,
Yeah,
dwindling, or I forget
Duskwood or
the
whatever it was.
Yeah, the season Everdusk that
Everdusk, yeah.
subtracted three from the effect of the old places of power and from the woodland
Yep.
depths battle trades. Now, this is kind of a sub part from what we used to have in places of power, the healing part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's not anywhere to be found on here is getting to choose three terrain features that are also overgrown and function for this. So keep in mind that I think if I have this correctly, you set up a wood for free. Every single army that has a faction terrain piece gets to set up one for free at the beginning of the game. And then we're going to see the summoning spell that we've already seen earlier in an earlier magic article or terrain article, one or the other, about summoning unlimited amounts of woods up to 3. So at
Yeah.
max, you only have 3 of these on the field anyway. So in contrast to that, plus the overgrown terrain features you could have chosen before, there are a lot less, let's say, nexuses that we could have for getting these abilities off.
Yeah, getting the overgrown terrains in the previous book was one of my favorite changes because I hated playing around a single Awakened Wildwood. Now, obviously, you can summon more of them, and it's easier to summon them than it ever was before. But it's also easier to destroy them because previously you could not get rid of them as an opponent. You could disable their abilities, but you could not disable their keywords. Whereas now you could actually interact and destroy them. So interact with them and destroy them. So I kind of wish that they showed us their war scroll because it's such an integral part of our army. There's really no way to gauge how strong any of these battle trees are gonna be and how strong a lot of war scrolls are if we don't get to see how tough an Awakened Wildwood's gonna be.
Yeah, yeah.
I really feel that's a missed opportunity. I find that so strange that you're not showing a key part of the army. It's like not showing Gnawhalls to Skaven.
Yeah, they stopped showing faction terrain pieces a number of faction focuses ago. I don't know what the idea was there, but yeah.
Well, at least we broke their new tradition of not showing the god models anymore. So we did get to see Alariel, so that's nice.
Tr- True.
Okay, on to Strike and Fade and Walk the Hidden Path. So these abilities are familiar abilities to the Sylvaneth players, but again, minor tweaks that are quite impactful in the long run. So Strike and Fade allowed you to pick up a unit that just fought and teleport them back within the range of an Awakened Wildwood. Now, three very important changes here. First of all, the range is also shortened from 9 to 6, so they're sticking with that 6-inch range. I quickly want to talk about that 6-inch range a little bit more after we've covered all of these abilities. But it's also at the end of any turn now, so it's no longer in your own turn, so you could potentially do it twice per battle round. That being said, that might look like a great change, but keep in mind, the way it's worded here, and that's how it's gonna play, it's at the end of any turn. It's not after you fought, which was previously the case. So you don't actually get to hit and then teleport back before you get hit back. So that's kind of huge for Sylvaneth, because if you're not running Tree Lords or Alariel, all of the other stuff folds quite easily to retaliation. I mean, the Kurnots are also quite tanky, but there is no protection against mortal wounds, and we still don't see much of that in the current faction focus. So yeah, losing those 3 inches once again, Ryan, getting hit back, quite impactful changes.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how this has worked with the Endless Spell, Spite Swarm, Hive, and the guaranteed charge, and just, well, guaranteed if it goes off, and if you get the Endless Spell up, this is definitely changing the play style. I think it unquestionably it's a nerf in terms of what Strike and Fade did. And in terms of teleporting, it's nice. It gives you more flexibility to teleport. Then again, it depends on how many Awakened Wildwoods are around, practically in use, right? And then also the fact that Overgrown's gone. So I think in general, this is a nerf, but we don't know how it's going to be interacted with. And we don't know, like, yes, the play style of the army is probably very much changing, but we don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. We don't, it just means the way we've been playing the army, and I play Sylvaneth too, is almost definitely changing, right?
Yeah.
The striking, literal, what we're used to of striking and literally then fading is gone, unless there's something that interacts with it, but I don't expect it to. I do think there will be synergistic pieces that we're not seeing in this reveal that are going to help strengthen the army, at least in the way it'll fight now. But who knows if it's going to have any semblance of how it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. I'd like to get back to you on that after we see the Walk the Hidden Paths, because my opinion on that kind of covers the entire ordeal here. So we'll quite quickly move on to the Walk the Hidden Paths first. So it's pretty alike Strike and Fade, but this was usually used to move up a unit, for example, but you could still move it back, obviously. The only difference here is you cannot be in combat, and it's in your movement phase, not at the end of any turn. So for the, apart from that, it works basically the same way. So you pick a Sylvaneth unit, you teleport it up wholly within a 6 inches of an Awakened Wildwood, obviously, and then you set it up again wholly within 6 inches of an Awakened Wildwood. So usually what you would see was you would buff a Sylvaneth unit with the Spite Swarm Hive to give them +2, I think, to their charge range.
Yeah.
And then back in the Wild Mage days from cities, you would get the +1 from the Beast lore for +3, but that's long gone now. So +2, then you would teleport something up, obviously outside of 9 inches, but you would get +2 to your charge. So it would functionally be a 7-inch charge, and then you hit them, and you use the Strike and Fade to teleport back without getting any form of retaliation. So you could still do a part of that. You obviously will get hit back because Strike and Fade at the end of the turn now. But Walk the Hidden Paths is more or less the same, except for, once again, that reduction in range there.
Yeah, so one thing that just occurred to me, since I haven't had as much time to think about this as I would have liked, back about Strike and Fade, which maybe complements this, is it does allow you to set up in combat. So you can teleport from one combat to the other, so long as that other combat was within 6, you could still be set up wholly within 6 inches of the other Awakened Wildwood. So you could switch combats, and it doesn't say you couldn't be set up in combat. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing that's gone that used to be a way to turn off.
It does say set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units, though, right?
Oh, sorry, I read it too fast.
That would be so
Yeah,
awesome, though.
anyway, forget what I just said. That would have been
Yeah.
cooler, but
Hmm.
forget what I just said. But the thing that is definitely gone, unless you're going to correct me again, is that 3 inches is not a way to turn off the woods. So that's where my
Yeah.
brain first went with that. It used to be that if you stood within 3 inches of a woods, the enemy stood within 3 inches, they could turn off it being a destination. They couldn't turn it off as a source of your teleport, but now that seems to be gone, except for the wholly within 9 inches thing, or outside of 9. So it might be implied, but remember when you set up a woods, correct me if I'm wrong, you're setting up the full, you could set up the full big guy, the
Hmm.
full 3.
Hmm.
And that means that there's definitely plenty of range where you could still be wholly within 6, but they might be within 3 of it. Um, I don't know if this is entirely true. I'd have to look at the model again, but it might be possible that they could be standing like just around where they used to be 3 inches, and that now you could still teleport to the other side of the tree. I don't know that for a fact, but it depends on what model and how big its base is, I
Yeah,
guess.
depending on the base size, you could do it. Yeah. Hmm.
But reasonably speaking, if they're standing near it, 9 inches is big enough to stop you from being able to teleport to it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's a so I take back what I said, but we'll see.
Yeah, a couple of things I want to note here before we move on to the battle formations. First of all, both of the teleporting stuff is a core keyword. So that means that we have seen one ability, I feel like, that turned off abilities that weren't core. I think it's one of the new Stormcast models.
It was
Um,
just if they were the target of that ability. I don't think any of these are
ah,
targeting. Yeah,
Still,
yeah.
I think that core
It,
does mean that there won't be any way to stop this. Uh, which I can kind of understand because without this, what is Sylvaneth, right?
yeah, I mean, I think it's also, if I'm not mistaken, has something to do with the modular
Oh
parts of
yeah,
the game. So if you chose to not play with the all full set of modules, this is still in the game.
yeah, that's a good that's a good possibility. Yeah, true.
But you could be right that it interacts with it in another way.
Yeah, so that's one thing I wanted to know. Also, something that I thought of was, ironically, the base of Alariel is bigger than 6 inches.
Oh yeah, that's
Uh,
gonna be a problem.
you can still teleport her because you can overlap her base with the roots of your Awakened Wildwoods. But man, if you forget that and you put her right next to a wood, if you see that happening in a tournament setting, she's not teleporting away. She's also not teleporting in it from Walk at Hidden Paths, for example.
Huh. Yeah,
Just
because
imagine
like
how annoying that's gonna be, Ryan. With all the leaves, it's already so difficult to maneuver around those woods, and now you have to wrap your entire giant beetle god model partially in that wood. I hate it. I hate that so much. Oh,
So what is the ruling? I mean, it depends on if it says impassable. I'm assuming it doesn't say impassable on it, but the physical objects of the trees, like sometimes people play as though you can just walk through them, but if you're playing rules as written, the trunks actually like block your movement.
the
So
trunks do, yeah.
can Alariel actually stand on the trunk parts, or
Well,
not the
not.
trunk parts, but the
Yeah, I meant the smaller part, the lower parts that connect the
sure.
trees
Yeah, yeah,
together.
yeah.
Yeah,
The roots or whatever.
yeah.
I agree with you, but I don't even know if she's physically allowed to, because I think we saw a rule that said something about what it means to place a model on top of something that's not flat. I don't remember exactly what the
Yeah,
ruling was on that.
I can't
So,
imagine that's how they're gonna rule it, Ryan, because it makes it impossible to move across it as well, right?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's just that's the one thing that's really rough about those woods. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of just saying it's just if it was just a perimeter,
Yeah,
that counted as the woods, that would be nice, but it's
yeah.
not what it is usually. So anyway, we'll see. But the 6 is pretty brutal for Alario.
It
Yeah, it's a
is,
really good
but
point.
for a lot of stuff, Ryan. To be honest, because if you're thinking about, let's say, the bugs, the cavalry bugs, if you're running a reinforced unit, so 6 of them, they have a 2-inch coherency now, which they need for their stupid wings. Good luck fitting that within 6 inches.
Yeah,
And okay,
yeah.
sure, combat ranges have been more generous now with 3-inch range, so but you don't actually need to pile in as much as you would before. But still, like, piling in is gonna be so rough if you have to stay wholly within 6 inches. It's so unforgiving. I usually played with the season that gave me 3 extra inches to have 12. I thought it was one of the
Yeah,
best ones.
me too.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I really don't understand why they did this. I don't understand why.
Yeah, it does feel like a nerf.
Yeah, I understand the teleporting back at the end of the turn because it sucked for your opponent not being able to interact with things that
Yeah.
deleted his units. Oh, that's also a thing. That's also an interesting thing, Ryan. Now the rule says pick a friendly Sylvaneth unit that is in combat. So
Yeah.
if you killed your target, you're stuck.
Yep. Yep.
So they hammered this rule in 4 different ways, and I feel like 1 or 2 ways was more than sufficient. If it even needed
Yeah.
that, to be honest, because Sylvaneth is such an unforgiving army to play. It's so difficult to pilot it well. I really wanted it to be a little bit more approachable, I feel, for newer players. You're gonna fuck up so badly and so often with these little things in the rules here.
Yeah, let's scroll down real quick to the tree song ability just so we
Yeah,
can talk about how often we're going to have these woods on the field. Let's
yeah.
skip over the healing song real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already seen this, and it's changed. You know, like tree song used to be the -1 rend around a
Yeah.
tree, if I'm not
We're still
mistaken.
gonna get
But
that, but
in
with a
this,
different name, I think.
okay, and this is basically Verdant Blessing in disguise, where you're summoning trees, right? Or
Yeah.
healing them. And so it's an unlimited spell, and that's nice. This really makes me think because you can't teleport from the trees if there's not a tree to teleport to.
Mm-hmm.
So it means you always need to have 2 on the field, at least, to maybe even using your battle traits, really. Um, and then that means you're going to need to have enough reliable wizard casting that you have got you can do the spells that you really want to do, plus also keep healing these and or setting them up.
Yeah.
So let's look at the rule. If there are fewer than 3, so you can max out at 3 Awakened Wildwoods, you can set up another one holier than 18 inches of the caster and more than 3 inches from all enemy units. So at least it's more than 3 inches from all enemy units. Objectives, other terrain features. If there are already 3, then you heal all 3. There's no range on that, so they just all heal at 3 wounds. We don't know how many wounds it's going to have. If it's going to have a ward, we don't know what its
Mm-hmm.
save characteristic is going to be. My question is like, what is the right amount of wizards to have to guarantee that you keep
Yeah.
max trees up at all
Yep.
times? And are those wizards fast enough to get across the table so that you can set up a tree that's in a tactically valuable place?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're castling and you're moving your army up slowly, you're kind of screwed because you're only setting up holier than 18 and then outside of 3, which
Definitely.
might not be enough to advance up the field fast enough. So this makes me think of the Belthanoses of the world that are going to help you get across the table faster, assuming he
Mm-hmm.
does some of the stuff he already does. It makes me think about your spellcasters that are faster. Are there other teleport options for those wizards to get them set up in a great place to use this spell as a magical intervention to set up a woods for your next turn and get you set up in the right spot? How hard is it going to be to remove those woods for your opponent? Maybe that's keeping the rest of your models alive as a trade-off because they're focusing their
Yeah.
shots or melee attacks into those trees. There's all kinds of questions here. What are your thoughts on any of that?
Man, I'm not gonna try. I'm gonna try to be less pessimistic, but I do have to give some critique here on just the entire way how this army is gonna have to play now. If the woods aren't tanky enough to sustain, you know, a decent amount of damage, Ryan, I just see ourselves throwing out Tree Song everywhere, potentially getting unbound quite a lot of times as well, just to get one wood set up somewhere, and then you're stuck with only that wood, and you will still get retaliation for it. And now, I do want to point out, Ryan, that if you're fighting within 6 inches of a wood to get a teleport back, it's quite likely that your opponent can hit the wood as well with a 3-inch pylon and then 3-inch range on their combat attacks. So they could actually destroy your wood before you get the teleport back.
True. Yeah.
So that's also pretty rough, you know? And sure, you don't get retaliation then because the wood tanked your stuff. But if that's one of your main damage units, and we know from Sylvaneth you're running probably 2 killer units max, if they're stuck there in the middle of an army that you don't want to be, where you don't want to be, it's so easy to delete them afterwards. So I really cannot see this going well unless the woods have become real tanky. And maybe what could happen, Ryan, what could happen is that the separate trees get stats, so that they can kill one tree, but then 2 trees are still on the table. That would be...
If that were the case, the wording of Awakened Wildwoods would not say up to 3, right?
Yeah.
Like I assume that you can set up individual, like smaller versions of the trees if you want to have them fit, but that would count as, even if you did the smallest piece, would count as a full Awakened Wildwood for the terminology on Tree Song, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. I think we just need to see the War Scroll.
Yeah,
But
see, that's what I don't understand. Why did they not show us this? Because it's impossible for me to gauge how difficult it is, because so far, I mean, even if it has like, let's say if it's twice as tanky as a Nahal, that's 16 wounds then, or what? How many wounds does a Nahal have? 8, I think.
I think a novel is just 6 wounds.
6 wounds, so 12 wounds on a 4+ save or something like that. That's pretty easy to chew through with some amount of dedication. So you still have to balance that out with spells, and the fact that it's quite easy to unbind as well. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm real curious. We'll have to see.
Yeah. Okay, in the interest of time, let's head up to the battle formation.
Yeah.
And this is basically a replacement for Oakenbrow, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that Oakenbrow used to keep your trees from bracketing, but remember, brackets aren't really as much of a thing anymore. And now instead, what it's doing is it's healing all of your monsters, so not just the trees. So it'd be Alariel, Dryka, and Belthanos,
Yeah.
if I'm not missing anyone, plus the trees. And so they heal a flat 3 instead of D3. And then we're going to see Alariel's War Scroll that she's already healing a certain amount of wounds anyway, so it's boosting that even more. That said, like you said, this is referencing the Endless Growth ability, which means you have to be holier than 6 inches. And if Alariel can't be holier than 6 inches, yeah. Also, Belthanos' base is not small. He can fit, but he's got to be hugging it.
Yep.
And again, going back to my question of what it means to be standing amongst it, I don't know if his base fits comfortably in between the full set of 3 trees. And if not, then he's going to have even more of a hard time trying to get that heal off.
You also just get punished for gluing the branches to your trees.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah. So competitive players are gonna like rip their branches off.
I mean, I've been thinking about it multiple times, and I don't actually use them as much for Sylvaneth as I do for just tabletop scenery.
Yeah, it would have been nice if they would have said monsters have 9 inches to play with or something. You know. Anyway, I don't know. Like, what are the other ones that we've got? The other formations here.
So apart from that, the healing song ability is quite good. I feel if you're playing with monsters, you're gonna enjoy healing 6 wounds every round. So that's quite good. It's a very short text below that to reveal what the other 3 options are gonna be. So smaller forest spirits protect their habitats with bloodthirsty vigor, so it's gonna affect dryads and revenants, I think. Then we've got the malevolent outcast terrify their opponents, so that's the nightmare revenants that we're gonna see in the War Scrolls a little bit down below. And then there's the one that we already have in the book, and it's probably going to be a reiteration of that, that affects the Buck Riders, so the elite cavalry, swiftly run down their foes. So I think maybe run and charge, or the pre-game move could still be a thing. We haven't seen that anywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, the forest spirits might include the Kurnos, actually.
Yeah, but
because
smaller forest spirit. Oh, yeah, smaller than a big tree, I guess. Yeah, that would be cool, because I also I found that was lacking, and I found it weird that there was nothing for the Kurnos, because that's been such a popular build.
Yeah,
that might actually make more sense, Ryan. That's a good catch there. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. I'm just guessing. And the Malevolent Outcasts is obviously just Drika and Spite Revenants. I
Yeah.
don't know if tree. I guess that means Tree Revenants would be around the Forest Spirits. I don't know, but in any case, I'm glad. It seems like a decent collection of options, but we'll
Yeah.
have to see how they play out.
Yeah, man. I'm so sad there's no Iron Bark reiteration.
Oh, yeah. Get some dwarves in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's Alariel it
Yeah,
up.
we covered the spell, so I'm so happy we can talk about Alariel Ryan, and she's awesome. This is the one war skill that got me really excited for this review. So we see a lot of good stuff here. 14-inch movement. I think that's better than what she had before.
It's -2 from the best
All
profile,
right.
same as the second worst profile. So
Okay.
she's slower, but a lot of people are getting -2
Yeah,
movement.
yeah.
So
16 health, 3 up save, which she did have already in a 5 control, so that's all pretty much as expected.
mhm.
Her spear took quite a big nerf, Ryan, because or a big hit because it did inflict 6 damage, which was usually enough to snipe a hero, and now that's
Yeah.
something from the past. So obviously it's only
Yeah.
one attack, and she got something pretty nice in return, I have to say. So I'm actually happy with the trade-off here because you can now use a Spear of Kurnoth decently in combat as well. I think she only fought with the claw in combat.
Yes, that's correct.
And the claw
Yeah.
made no sense whatsoever. I mean, if you rolled a 6, it was cool because you could potentially one-shot a guy, but that basically never happened. And then it was only on a 6 to wound as well, I think. So you still had to hit with a weak-ass profile first, or you did have to wound something like that, right? You had to wound if the wound
Um,
went through. Then if you rolled a 6, something like that. It was weird.
yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah,
If a wound went through, got allocated.
yeah.
So I
And it
mean,
had no
definitely
rend.
the output is much higher. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that the Spear of Kurnoth is now a melee profile as well. It just makes sense that you would use it for that as well. It's also a good profile, 3s and 3s to hit and wound, and then 2 rend and 2 damage, pretty juicy. And then the Wardroth Beetle also got a little bit of a glow up because it doesn't bracket as much anymore, and it was really punishing when this unit took a hit because it really hurt her damage because it was the only thing that actually inflicted damage. I also believe that it only had 4 attacks, but the damage
Yeah,
was a
so
bit better.
yeah, so when it brackets, it goes back to its old attacks,
Hmm.
but it didn't get the full monsterification because it didn't have any room to go on the wound roll. It was already a 2+, so it just lost -1 to hit, or it got a -1 to hit. And then the damage is the equivalent of the second best bracket. So I think I haven't done the math, but just eyeballing it, I think it comes out a little bit better. And then when it's even on its best profile, but when it gets bracketed, it's not that bad of a bracket.
Yeah,
So
no, for
yeah,
sure. I think overall she's much more dependable now for damage-wise.
yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the battle damage thing we can skip. So Life Bloom, interesting as well. I love this change. It's in any hero phase now, which is huge. And you also got the flexibility of picking an ability. So you could either use the Life Bloom to add 1 to your casting rolls for this unit, or you could heal 2d3 to this unit. Now she already healed 2d6, but only in your own hero phase. And it's much better having to split that into different parts, and you also being able to do it in your opponent's hero phase because you're gonna take some damage on her, and if you got double turned, you would usually lose her. Now she has the 2d3 in your opponent's hero phase as well, and if you're full health in your own turn, you could just add 1 to your casting. Pretty good glow up here.
Or in your any hero phase, you can add
Yeah,
1 to your casting
sure.
for a
Yeah,
magical intervention.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Okay, then Metamorphosis, somewhat the same as it was before, but some changes here once again. So 7-2 cast, only 12-inch range. That's rough. It inflicts 2d3 mortal damage now on the target, and if the target is destroyed by this spell, you can immediately resolve the effect of the Tree Song spell as if this unit had successfully cast it. So I'm not 100% sure anymore, Ryan, but did it actually have to kill a model or a unit? In the
as a unit before.
Okay, I
Yeah.
think at some point it may have been a model, but I'm not 100% sure. I love that they put the tree song spell in here instead of explaining how to set up a tree, because this makes much more sense, and it's also way more flexible because now you can also do it wholly within 18 inches of Alaria, so you could potentially set it up way off from that unit that you killed.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, yeah, like you said, it lost 4 inches of range. I'm trying to think real quickly about the math on this because it used to roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified casting roll.
Yeah.
And then for each 3+, so on average you did 7. You were rolling 7 dice, and then that was times 2/3. So the 4 and 2/3 wounds, and now it's doing on average 4 without having to roll.
It's less spiky,
but of course it could have.
On average is the same.
Yeah, roughly the same. I mean, the thing is, killing a unit,
it's gonna be difficult.
I mean, that said, mortal wounds have been taken back a lot in the game right now, and at least it's not doing an equivalent to what you rolled, and it had to roll a 2 first, I guess. And then the other thing is, of course, you could also do this as magical intervention, so you can do it twice as often.
Yeah.
If you want, and then you're getting a tree song, which is probably what you wanted to do anyway as your magical intervention if it goes off and kills a unit. So I think it might be stronger secretly than it used to be, but it's not as swingy as it used to be either.
Yeah, losing the range on this spell is quite big though.
Yeah, the game does seem like it wants to be a lot more up close and personal than it was.
The annoying thing about this, Ryan, is that you teleport in your movement phase, so you miss the opportunity of using this spell. And if you actually manage to get Alaria wholly within 6 inches and you teleport back at the end of the turn, you're once again out of range, probably.
Yeah, I'm just assuming you're not going to get to teleporter that often. Like you're not going to want to hug the trees, or there's not going to be enough trees to hug. So
yeah, I mean,
I'm not counting on it.
You've got power through, and I could potentially be power back.
Sure, fair.
Because she's gonna outnumber the health profiles of a lot of stuff, and then she can use a command point to get back into range of the trees and then teleport back. So I think it'll happen more often than you think, but you're right, it's gonna be difficult. Okay, I'm gonna quickly cover the living battering ram first. So her rampage ability is something that all the ogre players will be very jealous of. You get to do this once per turn in any charge phase. If this unit charged this turn, pick an enemy infantry unit within 1 inches of it to be the target. You roll a dice, another d3. And on a 3+, inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So up from 3 damage up to 6, potentially.
Yeah. So, I mean, because it's matching, because you had to hit that threshold of a 3+ first, it means the expected value goes down a little bit from rolling just a d6. But if it does go through, this is where it confuses people. If it does go through, so given that it's gone through, it does more. Mm-hmm. It does on average 4.5 instead of 3.5. But there's also the chance that you don't know it goes through and then it doesn't do anything. But it used to be a stomp that did extra damage, right? It did d6 mortal wounds on a 2+ instead of d3. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit reduced, but and it has to target an infantry now.
Yeah,
Stomp used to not be restricted,
which was also not the case with Stomp. So it's a
true,
nerf, but,
true. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, and then you want to get to the Rite of Life. Yeah.
So overall, I just want to point out, Alaria got a little bit more tanky as well because she's got a inbuilt 6-up ward now.
Yeah.
Which is new and quite valuable on 16 health. But if you're thinking that's where it ends, well, you're going to be happily surprised. So in your movement phase, you can use the Rite of Life ability. This is basically her recursion ability. So you pick a friendly Sylvaneth unit, and on a 4+, you can set up half of that unit's... a destroyed Sylvaneth unit. And you can, on a 4+, you can set up half of that unit. Once again, you've seen this multiple times in different armies. Funnily enough, here it says wholly within 9 inches of a friendly Awakened Wildwood. So all of a sudden, she gets the 3 inches back. Well, there might actually be a very good reason for that, Ryan, because you could also use it on a monster, and you could also use it on her. because it
Yeah.
says here that you can use this ability if this unit has been destroyed, but then this unit needs to be the target. So that means you allocate 8 wounds to the replacement unit, which is actually better than her resurrection ability was previously. But that functionally means, Ryan, even though the roll's not going to get easier, which it did in the previous version, that means that if you lose her turn 1 in your opponent's movement phase, for example, the very first turn of the game, you still have 5 chance of getting Alarielle back. And even if she's destroyed once again, you can still get her back the next turn. So in theory, because it's not once per battle, in theory, you could get Alarielle back 5 times. Can you imagine the headache this is gonna cause for your opponent?
I mean, it's definitely flavorful. Of course, you don't usually like a 4-up
No,
roll
I
for
hate it for a
something like
roll,
this.
but for a god mode, I'll take it, right? I'll
And she
take
could bring
it.
back any other monster too.
Yes, that's
So I mean,
massive.
that's pretty. It's replacing her summoning rule.
Yeah,
So which is good because it means you're not accounting for her points on the basis of what you
exactly.
could summon,
Yeah.
which is kind of nice. Now you said something about it's better. It's allocating 8 damage points. Why is that better than it used to be? Because I'm reading the rule right now and it said she came on with 8 wounds allocated to her.
Ah,
Is
I thought it
is
was less. I thought it was
no?
more.
She was always at half life.
Ah, okay.
So yeah. But I mean, obviously that applies to a Spirited Earthu or a Tree Lord or whatever you might bring in.
Yeah.
Just really quick, referencing other things because I don't want to. We need to hurry a little bit. I think
Mm-hmm.
is she's not retreating and still shooting and or charging
Yeah.
anymore. So that's a little bit of a nerf. And she's also not once per game turning everything into Overgrown because Overgrown doesn't exist anymore. How often did you use that ability back in the day, or when you could?
Yeah, not often, to be honest. Either
I think
in
people
the very
did,
first
but yeah.
turns or in the very last couple of turns.
Yeah, comment down below if you guys feel like that's a huge nerf or not. I'm curious to see what the Sylvaneth experts out there are
Overall, to be
thinking.
honest, you had to select, I think, 3 to 4 overgrown terrain pieces. It's been a couple of months since I played a Sylvaneth game.
Yeah.
And if you did that well and thoughtfully, especially with, in general, you'd have 8 terrain pieces on the table. You're already covering half of the table. Then you've got your Awakened Wildwood that could not be destroyed previously in your own base. So you would already have that place to teleport to and from. And then you usually had a way to at least summon one more. So, after turn 1 or 2, I usually have plenty of options to teleport to and from. So that's why I didn't
Yeah,
use it as much.
I think one of the big things was that later on in the game, you might use it to help you get over to enemy
Yeah.
territory because those are the few that you couldn't turn on as overgrown.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's keep going in the interest of time
Yeah.
and my computer battery, unfortunately. Um,
Okay. On to the Spirit of Durthu. So also still, retain most of his value, at least in my eyes. So 5-inch move, 3-up save still, 14 health are pretty nice. Now this unit usually got punished quite harshly when it bracketed because it had 6 damage, I think, on his Guardian Sword. But then once it took, I don't know, the latest bracket was not as bad as the one before that. I think 5 wounds maybe. It
well, seven wounds. It was D6. Yeah.
D6 wounds, yeah. D6 damage, I mean, yeah. So that was quite harsh. Now you had the Greenwood Gladius to improve its attack characteristics, so you could potentially really delete some stuff if you teleported in on a full bracket, then hit hard and then teleport back. And obviously, if you were Oakenbrow, this never really bothered you much. But the Guardian Sword now not bracketing to 3 at worst and having a fixed damage of 5 is quite nice, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at the chart right now for the first time, but I mean, he got +1 base attack,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there used to be a way that he got an extra attack if he was holier than the
Yep.
Wildwood.
Yeah, they now
So
get
now
+1
he's
to hits.
yeah, so it's like he's always getting that +1 attack, which is really strong. You could have +1 hitted him. There was no other way to give him +1 attack. Well, maybe there was some extra unit in the army that could have done it, but generally speaking, you can't just all out attack and get an extra attack. So I think this is I'd rather it be this way, where you only get the +1 to hit if you're standing around a tree, but you could also still get it by all out attacking. So he's getting that extra attack he used to want all the time. Then he's getting +1 to wound by default. He might be getting that +1 to hit by standing near the thing. And then, like you said, the damage is fixed. Plus, he's getting +1 rend as if old Tree Song, is always on against a monster. So I think taking the Greenwood Gladius out of the equation, which we don't know if that exists or not. Maybe it
It
does.
might, yeah.
I think he got a big glow up there. So
Yeah, keep in mind, Ryan, the Wrathful Guardian, you might have skipped over that when you were quickly analyzing this, but it adds 1 if the target is within 3 inches of the Awakened Wildwoods.
Oh, nice. So it's a little more flexible, maybe.
Well, it really depends, because if you don't, your opponent usually doesn't want to come within 3 inches of an Awakened Wildwood. Now, he might want to do that to attack that Awakened Wildwood, as I said earlier in the video. So this might actually be a way to, scare off opponents from attacking your Wildwoods, because they know that they'll get hit by the Guardian Sword, for example.
Right.
Or more easily.
I mean, at least he doesn't have to be babysitting a wood, right? I guess is kind of the idea.
Yeah. So he lost his ability to give strike last, and he lost his ability to potentially do quite a lot of mortal wounds with his talons, but the talons were usually useless and not inflicting mortal wounds. So you still got the mortal wounds on a crit, obviously, but it's also now just a good profile apart from the mortal wounds as well. So overall, I'm inclined to agree with you that it's a buff overall.
What were you saying about the Talons doing mortals before?
Wasn't there a rule where when they rolled a 6 or something, they inflicted mortal damage?
I'm looking through the rules right now, and I'm not seeing that. So I think that might have been an old version. But in any case, obviously they're doing crit mortals now.
Maybe it was just on a normal tree lords then. Or it was maybe an old rule, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the profile did get nerfed a bit. It's -2 to hit from what it used to be.
Yeah.
And then its wound, well, no, it's to wound roll is fixed at what its top bracket was, so that's good. But I don't know. It might be actually at least getting mortal wounds through is pretty decent.
So veteran Sylvaneth players, am I correct here that it's at some point in the game it did mortal wounds? I feel like it did, but I'm actually surprised that it doesn't do that anymore, because it's not that I play Sylvaneth that irregularly. Difficult word for me to say. Anyway, I think this Titanic duel is also pretty neat.
Yeah. Did you read it already?
No. So once per turn,
go for it.
Combat phase, you don't actually have to have charge here. You pick an enemy monster that you're in combat with. Another 3+, you subtract 1 from all of its attacks for all of its melee weapons. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Interesting that this is the Titanic duel that of the normal Monstrous Rampages has found its way here. So maybe it doesn't exist anymore. This brings up a question which is interesting to me, because it's you're subtracting 1 from the tax characteristic of a monster, and monsters often have companion attacks. And does it work if you're debuffing? Like, because usually you can't change its attack profile if it's a companion, but does it work if you're debuffing it?
I mean, I surely hope so.
Because otherwise this isn't that effective. It would just be affecting the writer. It doesn't seem to make sense. So I'm hoping that that's, maybe we've already seen the rule and I'm just forgetting that it had that legalese in there, that you can't change a friendly unit's companion attacks, but someone can change an enemy's attacks. So I'm curious.
Still very vague to me.
Yeah.
I think they said something about it not always interacting with stuff, but still interacting with some ability. So we'll have to wait and see. They might have actually explained, as you said. Let us know in the comments, guys. Okay.
Yeah, and then it also lost Walking the Spirit Pass, which makes me think that it's either been given to the other tree, one of the other tree lords is like their specialty, or that they just all lost it. So
I think it might be on the Ancients.
Okay, that could be cool.
Yeah, because he also had the ability to summon a Wildwood, so it makes sense that he would interact more with the Wildwoods.
Yeah.
Okay, on to
Okay.
the spider revs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what your opinion is on these guys, but I'm still in the camp of they just cannot find a way to make these guys be useful. 5 inches move, 12, 12, that would be amazing. 2 health, 5 up
Hmm.
save, still pretty bad. And 1 control. So 3 attacks, 3 fours, no rend, 1 damage, and crit mortals. I think the current version did something like this. I've never actually used the current version, Ryan, ever. So please correct me if I'm wrong here.
It's actually identical, except it got -1 to wound, so they only got worse because they used to have unmodified hits do
Yeah.
1 mortal wound.
Yeah, and right now I
Um,
think they're costed at 80 points and still no one takes them.
yeah.
So, I mean, their battle formation is gonna have to be real good, Ryan, for this to
Yeah,
matter.
or Drake is gonna have to buff them like
Yeah,
crazy.
like crazy. Yeah.
The tech on this ability is decent. Go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and read it for
Yeah,
us.
so in any combat phase, which is important, you pick an enemy infantry unit in combat with this unit to be the target, or roll a dice on a 3 plus. The target cannot use commands for the rest of the turn, which is a little bit like the Slanesh beasts or fiends, but they do it on a 4 up, I think.
Hmm.
Wasn't that a
Yeah, I
thing for
forget.
them?
Could be. I'll take a
But
look
it
while you're
might
talking
have
about
been
it.
on any unit for them, and this is only infantry. I still feel like this is way too weak. Maybe if I was on a 2 plus, Ryan, I think I would, want to afford 80 or want to use 80 of my points to spend on a cheap ass unit to ignore commands. But as it stands, I don't see it.
Um, it's gonna stop powering through, so maybe that's something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just don't know. I'm looking at the fiends, by the way. It was on a 4 up and strike last, so I think you're
Oh, so
thinking of just
crazy.
maybe roar. This is kind of like a
Yeah,
roar, but
there's
for
been so
infantry.
many iterations of these rules, and we've done 21 reviews or 22 reviews by now. So the,
Yeah,
the details are just swimming through my head right now.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think this unit's looking good. Like turning off command abilities is okay, but they're just gonna die,
Yeah.
and it only goes off on a 3. I like you said, I think if it went off on a 2 or auto would be too strong, I think. But
Would it do on a
yeah.
5 up save?
What's that?
Would it though on a 5 up save? You would get to use that probably
Um,
once in a game and then it would die.
yeah, maybe. But do you really want to be putting your attacks or your all of your output into this unit?
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, then they would have at least served the purpose. I think the only thing that they've got going for them compared to their previous iteration is now they have 3-inch range. So if you reinforce them once, it's 30 attacks, which would do 5 mortal wounds on average. But even then, that's not very
Yeah.
impressive.
If there was a way to make them have +1 damage, I'd be much more a fan of them.
Yeah.
Because then the crits would be going through as 2. So that probably doesn't exist, but in
If
the
the, if
case
the
that it
tree
did,
revs are anything like their current version, I could just not see these guys ever outclassing a tree rev.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. The tech that they've got is okay, but like the fact that people are going to be saving up their CPs for magical intervention, for a counter charge,
Mm-hmm.
that's 3 CPs already in your opponent's turn,
Yeah,
and you only have so many. How many all-out defenses and all-out attacks are you really going to be worried about as much as we
exactly.
used to be? So I don't know.
Yes, interesting thing I want to mention here is they lost the outcast keyword. Um, so we have the battle
Oh,
formation that's going to interact with these guys. We're assuming at least. So it's no longer gonna refer to the outcast keyword then. So it's probably specifically gonna mention Spite Revs and Draika, or Drycha.
yeah.
But why would you use a bell? I just can't really see a bell formation that would make this worth it. It needs to be really good, and even then, it's gonna. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe they actually come up with a crazy battle formation for these guys. But then I would also feel pretty bad to me because I would also want to use these guys outside of the battle formation sometimes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, they used to have their sub faction Dreadwood had like teleports, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once per battle you could walk the hidden path twice. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're going to go in that kind of direction. I don't know. But
If they would allow these
I,
guys to treat terrain as an Awakened Wildwood, that would be interesting.
yeah, it would definitely expand it.
Mhm. But then tree rifts were always the teleporting thing or the teleporting unit, so they'll probably lose that, to be honest. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So Spite Rider Lancers.
Yeah, quickly cover it for me.
Sure. Okay, so Spite Rider Lancers, I'm just going to be looking at this as I go because, again, I didn't have too much time today. They lost 2 inches of move, which is rough, but again, a lot of the fast units and armies are losing 2 inches, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. They stayed at 5 health and a 4-up save
Yeah.
and control 2. Let's see. So let's take a look at the lance. So obviously, it's got this more range than it used to have,
Mm-hmm.
but like as everyone did. But they lost an attack on the lance. They lost a point of to wound, so it's -1 to wound from what it used to be. They lost a point of rend, or at least they get it back only against cavalry,
Which is
and
weird.
they lost. And then they kept the same damage, but on the charge they're going up. Now, did they have a bow? No. If they made a charge before, they had strike first by
Yeah.
default,
Yeah.
just for charging. Um, and so now their output does get better if they charge, even despite the -1 to wound. I'd have to check here. I'm going to do the math real quick while you're talking about
Yeah.
it, but I want to do a comparison to see because they lost an attack as well. So give me a sec and you keep talking about everything.
Yeah, so we see pretty much the same profile for the mandibles, only they reverse the hit and wound characteristic here. So that means they'll lose more value than the lances will. They do also gain the +1 damage to their on the charge though, but I think they might actually have had it already before. I think they already had 2 damage. Let me quickly
No,
check here.
no, no, yeah, I was just looking at it. They didn't have it before.
Okay,
So
so that's nice.
so I did do the math. It's only a little better, and the fact that they don't have a guaranteed -2 rend, I would say in some circumstances might actually be worse. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. But the what's it called? The mount, the sharp mandibles there,
Yeah.
is the same exact profile, but now it's got +1 damage on the chart. So I think that's where the most difference is going to be made is actually with the mount and not with what I just said about the rider. Um, that said, they're giving the strike first thing. They're healing, but they used to bring back a whole a whole heal all wounds to the
Yeah,
unit
the bringing
if
back is
they
the
slayed
other
anything.
variant of the Buck Riders.
Yeah, but they both had the healing thing, but
Yeah.
now they're only healing 3 wounds instead
Mm-hmm.
of max 4. So,
Yeah, and it's
you
even
know,
worse, right? They healed all wounds at the end of each phase, but only when they slew an enemy model. So there is
yeah,
that trade-off. So if you killed stuff, you would be healing more often, and usually you'd only heal once, obviously, because they need to slay a model, and that's only in your own hero phase, in your combat phase, or in a combat phase. But now healing 3, I think this could easily have been heal all wounds to this unit. It's not like a huge difference. It's 1 wound difference.
yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, I feel like it's functionally better ultimately because they don't have to have
Yeah.
killed something. And imagine that they get stuck in combat and can't charge because when they're
Mm-hmm.
charging, they're doing their big output.
Mm-hmm.
So even on the turns when they don't get the chance to charge in, they're still getting to do some damage. What price point would you put these guys at to be convinced to take them?
140, 150.
Yeah, they're at 180 as they currently are. And they lost their 6-inch pylon move.
Yeah.
And then they lost the ability to rally on a 5-up, but that's not exactly a thing in the game really anymore.
Yeah,
So
I always
I don't
played one
know.
unit as a fast unit because before the Balthanos era, you had no way to reach corners of your battlefield without the teleport from the tree rifts and so on. So I wanted this one fast unit to be a thing. They lost some movement now though, which is punishing in some regards. But they also lost their guaranteed strike first on a charge. So that's also something that kind of affects how they will play because I tended to use them as a backfield objective grabber and killer of small units. They'll be better in killing stuff now, but they'll not always do it with a strike first profile, which means you're either gonna have to select them manually to fight as your first selected unit, and thus take some payback on different units, or you know, you're gonna have some payback on this unit. The 2-inch coherency is a nice, well, I wouldn't say buff. It's a nice ability to have because they're so hard to keep in a shorter coherency because of their giant wings. But overall, I'm not super keen on these units. To be honest, I know that a lot of people were, and if you took them in their own sub-faction, they were actually quite potent for a while. I was never a fan of them, so I might not see the secret sauce here. That might be a thing. But once again, I feel like with a battle formation, these guys might actually become really good. But then I don't want units only to begin in a certain battle formation. I thought we were past that. So I would actually want to see more value of these units from these units, or points drop. Sorry.
I don't know. +1 damage for both profiles on the charge is pretty juicy. So
True.
there's a version of this that I really like, and then them healing themselves just automatically could really keep this unit on the table for longer than you think. I'm curious to see how Belthanos works with the army. I think that's the kind of a missing piece here, because obviously if they keep him in the same design space as he's been recently,
Yeah.
then he's going to be a very big part of these faster, hard-hitting armies. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, I would actually say that these guys might actually also be important outside of Belthanos' thing, because they're your only fast pieces if you're just stuck to teleporting and no Belthanos buffs. So that's also a thing.
Yeah, it makes me think of the other flying unit that moves 12 inches that's not bug riders is Gossamet archers. I'm really hoping they really buff them up.
I wanted them I wanted Alariel to get to summon them at least once in 3rd edition. I hoped for forever that they would change their ability to also allow her to summon Gossamets, because that would be the only way I would ever put that unit on the table as it was in 3rd edition, because it was so overpriced. I hope they actually make him super cheap now and just a good ranged unit. I don't need their shenanigans, to be honest. It's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So that's it. We can actually quickly look at the Spearhead War Scroll if you want, Ryan.
Yeah, we've already technically seen this from a leak of the 4 Spearhead War Scrolls, but let's quickly cover it. Their save got one worse on the Hunters, so that's not a good start.
Nope.
The range got really reduced, which was one of their big pluses. It went from 30 inches to 18.
Yeah.
Granted, they got +1 to hit on that profile, and the rest of the profile stayed the same. They're not shooting in combat, according to this, though. Again, keep in mind it's a Spearhead War Scroll. Their melee profile stayed exactly the same from what I can tell. Now, their ability that's here, while they're contesting an objective, friendly units contesting that objective have a 6+ ward. This is kind of replacing their, like if they were contesting an objective, Sylvaneth units wholly within 6 of that objective were treated as being within an overgrown. So I think this is actually a nice change.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't like teleport from that overgrown or anything. It was mainly for like, I forget exactly what you could and could not do, but it didn't cover all of the uses. But 6+ ward is not, it's not something I'm shrugging, you know, or
No, I'm hoping
sniffing
that
at
actually
here.
shows up on the other War Scrolls as well for the Kurnots.
Yeah, because all they have to be doing is putting a foot on that objective. And then the other units contesting it also touching it. Don't have to be wholly on the objective or anything. So it could give, if you took, maybe all Kurnoth units are doing this. I kind of expect they won't, but if you put in a Kurnoth unit on each objective, just towed on, then your whole army is kind of getting a 6+ ward, which is not really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of 6+ wards, but I think it's still better than nothing.
Yeah, I could actually see it more for the melee Kurnoths than for these guys, because these guys usually don't get hit. At least in their current version, they could shoot through the Wildwoods. I hope they still can. It would be fine for me if the sword and scythe Kurnoths lost a point of save and gained that ability to get a ward, because they were always so vulnerable to mortal damage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what the Lady of the Vine's going to be doing, so maybe she'll be boosting that. Who knows?
That's also something that I wanted to mention, that I almost expect her to become a monster, keyword at least, because we've seen it with a lot of War Scrolls, like Sylvaneth, for example. We've also seen him become a monster, so we might actually also see that for the Lady of the Vines, and thus she would interact with the battle formation that we see above.
Yeah.
The only thing I
Okay.
quickly want to mention still is we might actually see an increase in the range of the current great bow, simply because the spearhead's battlefield is so much smaller that would be
Mm,
incredibly unfair to make it 24 or even 30 inches, because that would just be corner to corner from in that battlefield almost.
fair. I don't know if we've seen an example of range changing on a unit on a Spearhead War Scroll, but then again, we haven't seen that many Spearhead War Scrolls.
Yeah, and just we haven't seen anything with previously 30-inch range on a war scroll either. So
There might have been a couple like artillery pieces or something, but
I
yeah.
mean,
Anyway, it
maybe only
doesn't.
the crawler, the Mortec crawler.
Yeah, that definitely got cut down from 36 or 30 to 24.
Yeah,
And then I want to, well, the range on the Warp Lightning Cannon I think got reduced too. I could be wrong. But or maybe the Warlock Engineer or the Jezzails. Something got changed. But anyway, um I could see your point there.
yeah,
And I don't mind this profile. Like I think getting +1 to hit on that profile makes me want to take them a little bit more, but I never really understood the charm of
no,
the the 9 block of Kurnoth bows. But
yeah.
some people that were really good players swore by them. So
Thing is, you paid like almost 250 points for 6 shots that would hit half of the time for 2 damage. I was like, why? And obviously, you could increase it with buffs from the army to increase their wound and hit profiles. But yeah, I'm with you on that. So I didn't see it. Still don't. So yeah,
yeah.
guys, that's the end of the review here. We've only got one more to go, Ryan. Tomorrow's Blades of Corn, and then we're done.
It's gonna be sad,
Yeah,
but like some people said, we can definitely do full reviews of battle tomes. I don't
definitely.
know
We
how
will.
that'll work out.
Yeah.
Definitely, at least the armies that we're good at talking about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know from my previous Sylvaneth tier list that some people said like you made some small errors, and I do definitely agree with that. This is an army I don't play as much as I play my Lumineth, for example, but I still play it quite often. It's just that it's there's a lot of very small things about Sylvaneth that just make it tick. So if we miss something here, especially because we had to do it a bit more quickly than we usually do, without the vast preparation that Ryan puts in every day, definitely let us know, and also let us know what you think about these war scrolls and these changes. Obviously, we can't really gauge the effectiveness of this army without seeing the Awakened Wyldswoods war scroll. GW, if you feel like it, you can still send it over to us, and we'll review it for you. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Leave a comment and a like, and subscribe if you want to stay in touch for the index reviews. And we'll see you tomorrow for the last faction focus for the Blaze of Corn. See you then. Bye bye.